Yes. 12. Okay. An independent computer service company tallied the service requests it receives for individual brands of personal computers. It found that after factoring in each brand's market share, KRV brand computers had the largest proportion of service requests, whereas Probit brand computers had the smallest proportion of service requests. Obviously, Probit is the more reliable personal computer brand.
All right, so what's our conclusion here?
Probit is the most reliable, or the more reliable.
Yes, and then what's our reasoning for that?
Because they had a smaller proportion of service requests.
Yes, so we have yes. Did anybody else think that this is going to be a flaw question?
Kind of. I objected in my mind, like, okay, but where are these service requests coming from? Kind of like, okay, I might have an issue with it, but am I going to take the time to call them? So if they have a smaller proportion, it could just be that people don't want to waste their time calling it in.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. So I did like at least that for this argument, at least it said like smallest proportion and not just like fewer to think that. So
Yeah.
we are talking about proportion. So Probit had the smallest proportion request, but so in order, so we know that Probit has the smaller proportion. Well, I guess take a step back. It's not a flaw question. It's a weekend question, but I definitely thought that this was going to be a flaw question. And one thing we can do on our weekend questions is expose that flaw, right? So like, where's the gap? And once we find the gap, which for me, it was exactly what Alyssa said. How do we know that just because Probit had like the smallest proportion request, how do we know that they're actually more reliable? What if my thing was like, what if they absolutely suck? Like I don't know, like kind of like Verizon, like customer service. Like I'm not even gonna try because nothing's going to happen.
Yeah.
And so yeah, maybe people aren't even going to request it because it's like, we're not gonna get help. Awesome. All right. So do you want to go ahead and does anybody have any other thoughts on this stimulus?
I just remember thinking I felt like this was going to be a very easy one. Like I understood it. I felt good about the stimulus. And then I got it wrong, but I don't remember like what my thought process was through the questions. But obviously it wasn't super easy if I got it wrong.
So we want to weaken the idea that Probit is the more reliable. So essentially we're trying to find something that Probit is not the more reliable company, and we need something that's going to make that true. So Kamani, do you want to go ahead and read A?
The proportions of service requests for the other computer brands in the tally were clustered much closer to Probit level of service requests than to KRV level.
So do you like that?
No.
Why not?
Because I think they're talking about the other computer brands.
Yeah, they're like saying like, hey, the other proportions are closer to this one than that like closer to one than the other, but that still doesn't mean that one of them is more reliable.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right. So what about Malika, do you want to read E?
Sure. E is Probit has been selling personal computers for many more years than KRV. I didn't cross that out, but I didn't like it. I just thought that was out of scope. And we're talking about Probit being more reliable. So like, whether or not they're selling more, I don't know. I didn't think.
Many more years. Well, one, like Probit is the more reliable company. I would think like a very small chance that if anything, I would think selling for more years would make you more reliable. And so it's honestly going there, even though that wouldn't be like, it's not much of anything, but it's going the wrong direction.
Yeah.
All right. Welcome, Mohib. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. I'll wait for you to call you for the next question so you can get warmed up.
Okay. Yeah.
I think Ashley, are you still there?
I'm here.
All right. What do you think about D?
D, did you want me to read it?
Yeah, go ahead and read D. It's in dog.
The computer brands covered in the computer service companies tally differ greatly with respect to their market share. I would say I don't like this one because it's kind of out of scope to be talking about the market share of like other brands.
Yeah, and just because they tally differ in respect to, so they're saying like, well, they tally greatly depending on like if they're in, I don't know, Jackson, Florida, or if they're in Denver, Colorado. But overall, we're saying that we tallied them individually, and so we know what the final tally number was. So it doesn't matter that by market share, like maybe one had like 100,000, maybe because it's a huge city versus a small town. Irrelevant. All
Okay,
right.
I know this is irrelevant, but this is like the second time. What is a market share?
I think it's just a place where something is sold. So like market share. So like wherever your product is offered.
Okay, wherever it's offered. Okay, that's like the second
It's
time.
it's a very broad term, to be honest. So like here by market share, I would be like, they might have like a Denver location and a Jackson location, and like their market share is like how far do they go out and sell?
Gotcha. Okay.
All right, and then Alyssa, between these two, which one would you eliminate and which one would you pick?
Okay, let me read them. For some computer brands, but not for others, most service requests are made to the manufacturer's service department rather than an independent service company. C, the company that did the tally receives more service requests for Probit brand computers than any other independent computer service companies. I don't even understand what C is saying.
Okay, so
Did the tally like this whole like survey? The company that did this receives more service requests for Probit bands. Or not for others are made rather than. I kind of like B more so than C.
yeah,
because
C would actually strengthen it. Like
B?
yeah, the company that did the tally received, so the company that like this independent contractor that did the tally received more service requests for Probit computers than any other like independent computer service company. So they're saying like not only did they get the most out of these computers, but they're so popular that like they're like out of any computer company that did anything, they got the most.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not C. And so how does B work? I think this is a tough right answer, actually. You have to, it's not what we predicted.
No, it's not, but it kind of explains, it's almost kind of like a paradox as it explains why they have a smaller proportion of service requests is because it's not going to that independent service company. It's going to like directly the manufacturers.
Yep. And some people are like, oh, and it is a mild answer choice, but we only need it to be at least one brand, right? And maybe the brand, there could be at least one brand that is more reliable than Probit.
Mm-hmm.
Did anybody else miss number 12?